Today on The Right Key, my guest is multi-instrumentalist and producer Mark Plati. Mark has worked with Fleetwood Mac, New Order, Janet Jackson, Lou Reed, David Bowie, and Prince, amongst many others. With hundreds of recording credits to his name and a career as strong as ever, he's a wealth of information. This series was conducted in the spring of 2020 via Instagram, and the audio and video quality do reflect that format. However, the words and insights of these guests are still priceless. Mark Plati is a multi-instrumentalist, engineer, and producer. And multi-instrumentalist doesn't really do him justice. He's an exceptional bassist and guitarist in addition to being a great engineer and producer. Some people who are multi-instrumentalists are just utility, and Mark is much more than that. He's worked with artists such as Talking Heads, Janet Jackson, Fleetwood Mac, Lou Reed, New Order, Al Green, Philip Glass, David Bowie, and Prince, among others. Just a few people. All music credits him on 187 recordings, but if you factor in all of the many remixes, his recording credits top 500. So, Mark.
Yeah.
You're from Colorado originally.
Not quite originally. I'm originally from New Rochelle, New York.
Oh, okay.
Yes, but my family moved to Colorado when I was 3 years old. So I kind of consider myself being from there because that's where, everything kind of happened early on. I don't remember New York as a wee baby.
So tell about this, because I read that you started pretty young in school music, and Duke Ellington's nephew, is that right?
I think it's a cousin.
Duke Ellington's cousin.
Yes.
Was teaching you.
Yes, that's right. I guess I was about 10, and a friend of mine was playing snare drum in the school band. And I thought, wow, I like to bang on stuff. I could do that. So my mother got me a snare drum from J.C. Penney. He had like the cool Ludwig. It was all, man, I got but within a month or two, I was the top snare drummer. I had that together somehow. And then I moved to New York when I was about 11 or so, which was pretty life-changing just because, I'd already been bitten by the kind of music bug a couple of years prior just from listening to the radio, because the radio was a wonderful thing at that point in reality. But
what were you listening to on the radio, if you can remember age 8, 9,
Sorry?
What were you listening to before you moved to New York? What had you been listening to on the radio?
Well, Top 40 radio when I was 10 years old had Santana. It had Chicago. It had, loads of stuff. Three Dog Night, my first favorite band. There was lots of stuff. I remember also The Doors. It was like the last, I remember Riders on the Storm was a single, if one can believe that. That was a single. Carole King was big that summer, I think. James Taylor. And then as it wore on, it got more like T-Rex. I remember that. Maggie May was a huge song. There was lots of this stuff. A lot of it came from England, starting to come over from the glam era. So, and this was like AM radio. And then when we moved to New York, we got the whole other side, because then it was a lot more urban here. So, and that was when the Philadelphia sound started to kind of take hold. So we got kind of all of that. That was also big radio music. It now kind of moved to FM. So like it or not, as a, you were going to hear all this music.
Yeah.
And like it or not, it was going to kind of get inside you via osmosis or just whatever. And I often say this to Gail Ann Dorsey, because she's sort of my vintage, and similar thing where we grew up in this time of like this huge potpourri of music from left and right and top and bottom. And it all had tremendous influence on us, and it was never intended. It just was from, living life.
Yeah. And then, but at some point you intersected with recording.
Yeah, that was a little bit later. When I was around 12, I sort of I got bitten by the bass bug because I was learning drum set, um, and then my teacher, Mr. Ellington, would take his students and pool them together. And I was playing drums, and this guy was playing bass, and I was like, "What is that? What is it? It's not a guitar, but it is. But it's like," and I don't know. I got kind of just, I don't know, really enchanted with the vibration, with everything about it was cool. So then the next summer, I took both, and I ended up in the jazz ensemble in like a year or something. And that was kind of my intention. Like, wow, I really, I would just love to be a bass player. That would be great. Um, but then when I was, I think, about 18 or so, a friend of mine was in a cover band, and they had saved their money from gigging, and they were making a record at I guess, a 16 or 24 track studio. I don't remember those details. Um, and I went to hang out. And I was there, and I kind of was around for like the evolution of, you know, a recording from nothing into something. And I thought, well, that's pretty cool and an interesting kind of combination of music and science. Uh, and I don't know, I just thought that's something else I could really maybe do, because by then I was a little more aware of the odds of being a musician, and I wasn't a studied musician, so I thought, I could maybe kind of do that. So that kind of that was kind of when that happened.
Hmm. Yeah, and so where's the original Mark Plati bass, electric bass, and snare drum and reel to reel recorder? Do those exist?
I still have the snare drum. I
You do have the snare drum?
I actually, no, I gave it to a friend of mine. I gave it to the friend whose demo I saw.
Oh.
Who, yeah, actually gave it to him. The bass, well, I don't know. It was a 75 Fender Precision. I think I sold it for a Rickenbacker, sold that for a 73 Precision, which got stolen. Uh, then I got a 64 Precision.
Oh well.
Yeah,
At least
so
you get a happy ending.
it kind of did that, but I learned after a while not to sell instruments. It was like something like that. Somebody's at my door.
Sounds like somebody wants to come in.
Don't they know what I'm doing?
So eventually you were studying and you ran off to Indiana. Why Indiana?
I don't know why not. Um, well, let's see.
Why not Berkeley? Why not other schools? And why not,
That's more of a complicated question in terms of just what was going on with life around then. When I was in sort of the upper reaches of high school, I had begun to kind of maybe consider myself like, oh, I got to grow up, and kind of feeling not the pressure, but the pull of like more of the traditional kind of family thing, and getting a job and getting a career in business or whatever. And maybe I should just do that. And, music's kind of, maybe it's not frivolous, but, maybe it's just a better idea to do that. So I applied to a bunch of colleges and got in. I had good grades. And then a friend of mine that was in the school band a couple of years before I went to, he was going to Indiana, and I saw him. And he said, you should really try to go there. It's got an amazing music school, and there's all these musical people around. I said, I should just apply there and see what happens. So I applied there, and then I just said, they have a great business school. I could like do all these things there. And when I got to Indiana, I think I was a business major for 3 or 4 days, something like that. And once I got out of the universe, the home universe, I was just like, what am I doing? What? Once I'm out of the orbit, I was like, what am I really doing? Do I want to do this? What? Um, but I was still not sure, like, well, am I really that kind of a musical person? I don't know. I found out much later, much later, that I had indeed come from musical stock, so to speak. So it kind of explained itself later down the line. But at that point, I was like, I don't know, maybe I should like. And they coincidentally had an audio technology program in the music school. So I kind of moved all my marbles over into that stack and into that pile, and um, yeah, just kind of went with that.
Would this have been the early '80s?
Fall of 1980.
Right. So I'm trying to think of who else was there. Was
Oh,
was Sean Pelton there? Was Chris Bodie there? Yeah, all those people then.
Sean
Because
Pell, and I
yeah,
knew all of them, and Jim Beard, and
uh-huh.
a couple of other really amazing sax guys, and they were all in David Baker's jazz band, who I would record. Um,
Wow.
yeah, that was part of our thing as audio students. We would record jazz bands. We would record, the symphonic concerts. We would record the operas. I used to love the operas. They were like huge production, um, because Indiana was hooked up in terms of the arts. That part of the arts program was really together. The music school was stellar, and everybody around there. It was just amazing to be around all these, fantastic musical people. Um, so much so that I've often considered should make some kind of film about that, like all of us that came out of this one little time period, because there are a lot of us out there. There's a lot in theater, um, as well as in just general music and jazz and rock and even in audio. There's a couple of engineers I know that came out of there around the same time I did. So I thought I should make a movie to just document, like, and basically ask what happened. What was in the water? What was in the mighty Jordan River in Indiana? What was in there that made us all kind of, that made this happen? I don't know.
Yeah, well, I think it was, I talked to Jim Beard about it, and I think it was about these peers, and I talked to Sean Pelton about it, and it was a magnet for a lot of musicians, and then that drew more musicians, and became such a scene. It was well curated by David Baker and the people there, uh, because also wasn't Kenny Aronoff there as well at the same time,
He was not in school, but he was
but he
there.
was hanging out.
Oh, he was there. This
Yeah,
was sort of, this was right around when Cougar was kind of breaking.
that's
Uh,
right. That's right. Yeah.
so he was around. He was actually the drum teacher for another drummer I knew. He was doing a lot of that at the time. But oh yeah, he was like, especially Sean. He was like him and Sean became pretty tight even back in those days. So
Yeah.
he was like kind of the guy around town. There was a couple of guys like that were just There was also like who was the amazing guitar player that ended up with Joe Ely. Oh, it'll come to me. But he was another guy that was just like, wow. I didn't know people could play guitar like that. It was just,
And so, were you playing bass then as well, or not?
I had kind of, I jumped back on the bandwagon with that. So I started playing a lot of bass, a lot of guitar. I just started to do that again. And I used to play in little cover bands. I used to play on little sessions for people sometimes. I used to play guitar at a lot of parties. There was a lot of that going on. People used to actually, if you can get your head around this, youngsters, we used to like have parties and sit around and sing songs. And I would be that guitar guy because I knew all the songs. I just had this kind of, I can't remember what I had for breakfast, but I could remember all the chords to this, that, or the other. So we used to do that a lot, with sometimes with substances, without substances, a lot of with. Uh, that was that was kind of the time for that. So I was playing a lot, and I kind of, by my sophomore years, I was just completely immersed in all aspects of music, technical and playing and performance, and all the rest. I was taking courses at music school, even though I wasn't, I ended up minoring in music just because I just took so many courses that, I earned a minor in music. So, yeah, it
So
was just, and
you
it
didn't
has,
get a music degree.
sorry?
You didn't get a music degree.
No, I got an audio technology degree and I got a minor in music, and technically got a degree in telecommunications, which was kind of related to audio science, but I earned a bachelor's degree doing that. I kind of covered all the bases without sort of doing the stuff I didn't want to do. I was sort of, I had a little bit of a knack for that, of just kind of like getting things accomplished without, once I, got in the studio world, there was a similar thing with that where I kind of skirted some of the, basic requirements like getting coffee for a year. I got around that.
Yeah. So I want to understand how you went from there to Dallas. Why Dallas? I mean, it just felt like feels like a lateral move in a way,
Well, because to get my audio degree, I had to have an internship. I had to do an internship at a studio. So the first thing I tried was New York City. I went back to New York in the summer of '84, and I went to this studio called Skyline, which is an amazing studio. And for me, having worked we had like a 2-inch 16 track and I think a 20 input board, and they had a big old Neve 8068. And
that would have been Paul Wycliffe's studio back then, right?
it certainly was.
Yeah.
That was his studio. And I remember there was some engineer who I forgot his name, but he was being assisted by this guy, Roger Mutino, who became another engineer. And so I went there for a week just to see what it was like. And all I really got to do in a week was I got to vacuum the desk a lot. I got to coil cables. I got to clean the bathrooms. I got to do coffee runs. I went out and got liquor. I went out and got people's photographs. I went and did other personal things for people. And at the end of the week, they were like, yeah, well, if you want to come on, you're good to go. And I just said, well, what happens next? Like, this stage of things, like, well, what's going to happen to me next if I continue with this? He said, oh, after about 6 or 9 months, then you'll go in the tape library and you'll, catalog tapes and whatever. I said, what? What? No.
You wanted to get to it.
No. And they let me watch one session. That's right. I got to watch a session for like an hour or something. It's just like and I remember in this session, I forget what it was, but they had like a delay, a rack delay, and they were trying to get like some kind of flange thing out of it. And it was very average and I was thinking, man, we can do better than that at school. I could stick my nose in there and go, well, but I don't do that. And I just said, well, so it just to me was like, all right. I decided I'll go back to school for another year. I'll go on the 5-year plan because, then I knew like by then I can minor in music. I could take more music. And so at the end of that, summer of '85, a friend of mine had interned at a studio in Dallas. And this studio was called Omega Audio. And it was a truck. It was a 48-track truck with an API desk in it. But it was also, that was only half of it because they also had a 48-track studio that was part of a complex, with like a video complex. And they used to do like ads there. They used to do, people's, some bands, but, a lot of commercial kind of music was done there. Some singer-songwriter stuff. And the deal there was like, I was going to get my hands dirty right away because this person said, you will work. You will work. You'll, go on the truck and you'll wire things up. You'll hang and you'll see. You'll be right in the thick of it. And in the studio, you'll assist all you want. And their deal was like, well, we're not going to pay you, but on down, you can use all the downtime you can eat, which was a good deal. Being a more commercial studio, they were a little more on that 9 to 5 trip. And me being 24 or something, 23, I was on like the 24-hour trip. I could just like stay up. So oh, cool. For me, that was great. And they had all these tapes in their tape library. I remember like one night I just mixed a bunch of Randy Newman stuff that they recorded on the truck. They had things like that. Like, wow.
Wow.
And I would start bringing in people to record, like local bands, just to like practice and do things. Because I actually had to do that to get out of the program, to graduate. I had to like present a project or something I'd sort of recorded. And I said, oh, I'll just get like, there's loads of bands around. So
there were some pretty good bands down in Dallas at the time. I went to school in Texas, and Edie Brickell, had she started to do her thing yet?
I tried to get them. They were not called that then. They were called the New Bohemians.
Well, it was Edie Brickell and the New Bohemians, but it was just the New Bohemians.
There was no Edie Brickell. She was in it, but the name was the New Bohemians. That's who they were. The Edie Brickell got added label time, like later. They did that.
Whoops. Mark, I think you're frozen. Mark is frozen. I'm going to text him. Oh, you're back. Are you there?
How is this? I am back. It decided my power was getting low, which is really odd.
Yes.
I should be. I thought it was fully charged up, but I guess not. Oh, is it like that? Let's see. I guess it does. I don't know. Should. Now I have to position you all proper. So we're like, this it's going to be wacky. I might have to hold it.
That's okay. Steady hand. So you're recording these local bands, and you're getting this experience, and then you stayed in Dallas for a while, and then it came time to jet to New York.
Yeah, I decided, okay, because I started to work there. I started to actually work. I was in a couple of bands. I was actually doing sessions, getting paid for that. And, it's like starting to set down a little bit of roots. And I thought, I got to cut this. Let's cut this off before I get comfy. So I loaded everything I had into my little Datsun and went home. Went to Indiana first and hung out there for a week. I broke down along the way in Arkansas. That was interesting. That's a funny story, actually, because my clutch burned out about 50 miles outside of Little Rock. And back then, this is 1986, and there was nothing, no cell phone, whatever. You had to hang out on the side of the road until something happened. Sure enough, I think somebody, a policeman, whatever, called the tow truck, brought me to some town, like a town with 15 people in it, and they got my little car up there, and they're like, "Hey, wait, this is a foreign car." Yeah. I said, "We ain't got no foreign car parts here." Like, oh. And I thought, I am never leaving this place. I will be here the rest of my life. But they were very nice, and they took me to the town diner and got me pie and introduced me. Like, this guy's going to New York, and he's broken it. Like, it was like the most exciting thing that had happened there in a very long time, I guess. So they had to tow me back to Little Rock. And to do so, they decided to take me by the swamps that had been in Deliverance.
Really? Did they announce it like that?
Oh, they pointed it out to me big time. Oh, you see them? That's where Burt Reynolds was in it. And I thought, oh, God, here we go again. I'm never getting out of here alive. I'm going to squeal like a pig, and that's the end for me. But no, they didn't. They took me there. And they had foreign car parts in Little Rock, and then I went home. But that was kind of... that was funny. You know, it was funny now. It's funny now. It was just like, ooh, swamps. I went to New York. I got back to New York in late '86 and decided to hit the pavement again. I said, this time I hit the pavement. I know a lot more than I did last time. This time I've been like working, and I've been producing stuff, but I've been engineering and mixing. I've been doing the whole thing. So I did like one would do. You go to all the usual suspects. You go to like the big studios that everybody wants to work at, like the Hit Factory, Electric Lady, Power Station, a couple other big ones like that. And you go, oh yeah, cool. I'm gonna get an engineer. And you get there, and they're like, no, we have no openings. But if you come back in 6 months, you can make coffee.
Right.
It was that, like, I was not gonna pass go and collect my $200. I was not gonna do that. So then I said, all right, I'm gonna try like a second tier place, because there were a lot of studios. It was like, all right, I'll try, like, there's a lot of little 24 track rooms. They do commercial stuff. They do whatever. So I started making the rounds of those places. And one of those places I went to was a place called Shakedown Sound, which was Arthur Baker's place. And if anybody doesn't know who that is, he was a very popular producer, remixer at the time. And they had an SSL room there. And they were busy. He was in like a big phase of his career. So there was stuff flying in and out of there.
Yeah, he had all kinds of stuff going at that time.
It was busy, and they were like, yeah, sure. You could work here. They started me right away as an assistant. The only thing was I had no idea about remixing. I didn't know what it was. No concept. I mean, I knew what they were, but I didn't know how to make one. I'd never seen it. So after a couple of assisting sessions, I started to figure out the way they used to do it, and I had to learn how to sequence and sample with the emulator 2.
Did Arthur had a certain process though for everything?
Yeah. What would happen there was we would get 2-inch tapes, and then we would strip off what we did not want, which is usually the drums, and then add new overdubs to what was there. And a lot of times, you would want to have drum machines and things. And many of these things were not done to a click. So you had to take this fabulous box called a Roland SBX 80 and generate like a clock to lock up to the song. It's funny you said Talking Heads, because I remember making that one. That was really hard to make that kind of click map to that song. It was just not steady at all. Sometimes it'd be really easy. Sometimes it was to click. It was nothing. And then there'd be drum machines, there'd be keyboards and things like that. And then, Arthur would mix. There'd be an engineer, and the engineer would get it sounding however, and, set up some delays and reverbs, and Arthur throw some stuff in, echo and whatever. And there you would have it. That's what they would want. So I watched that for a while. I was like, wow, I know kind of where this is going. And they figured me out quick. They figured out, wow, this guy's musical. I'm not just a knob twiddler. I can that's not a bad thing to be just an engineer. It's a great thing.
But then you probably started playing on lots of stuff.
They figured out not only could I play on stuff, but I could sort out a lot of problems. Because once we started using samples a lot, because that was the year, it was 87, the year that the S900 came out, the Akai, and it was just like, wow. Then you could put anything anywhere, provided you knew what you were doing. Because I remember working on some people, and they go, that sample doesn't work there. I'm like, yeah, because that's B flat, and the thing's in B or whatever. I would know these things. And like, oh, wow, well, can you fix it? Yeah, well, So I would know those things. So they figured that out quickly, that like I could fix a lot of musical stuff that they had no idea about. That was another revelation at the time, was working with these people doing like high level work that had that had no musical tools whatsoever. That was quite a revelation. Like, wow, you don't know, you know. I mean, I'm not talking just like not reading music, but just like nothing. Just sort of they like a lot of songs, like DJs. And again, there's an art to DJing. There's an art to like knowing a lot about a lot of different genres, a lot of songs and things. And Arthur he was great at that point. He knew everything. Um, but musical knowledge, like nobody played an instrument and nobody came from that background. So it was like, okay. Um, but I did. So I was able to, you know, get in that world and be sort of that guy. And I was that guy for, I don't know, 3 years or so, because I would end up, um, well, so at Skyline, I think 6 months in, they said I'd go to the tape library. At Shakedown, 9 months in, I was a mixer. I was like doing it.
Wow.
So again, I kind of figured out how to skirt the
What,
skirt the rules a little bit.
was the schedule just insane? Because he was so hot then.
Insane, because not only was he working, but like other remixers and editors were working at his place, because it was kind of like a, you know, like a hotbed for that sensibility, for that headspace, like, you know, because he had all the boxes everybody wanted. He had the emulator, he had what was the sequencer at the time, Lin 9000, all these things, and you know, people wanted those. So a lot of times I would work in the B room, which was a Trident room, and I would just be doing people's overdubs with them. And then, you know, occasionally I would go down the hall to mix, but at that point, even though I was mixing some stuff, I was still assisting, like some first call engineers, like the, you know, Tom Lord Alge, a couple guys like that were really, you know, full on. So I got to learn a lot from watching those guys.
Yeah.
So that was just an amazing, you know, twist of fate that I happened to, you know, knock on that door.
And so you worked like crazy there, and then eventually you said it's time to move on because you've done a lot of that.
I did. I went with it for a while because, you know, I was still like, well, you know, I'm not from this, you know, like, because the next logical step was for me to become a remixer myself. And I thought, but that's not really where I'm coming from. I mean, all this knowledge is great, but that's not who I want to be. So I stuck with it a while until I was just about to get my foot out of it when I got a phone call saying, "Do you want to go to Paisley Park and work on some remixes with Prince?" I said, "Give me that plane ticket."
Yeah.
This was with a person I've been doing a lot of work with. He was a DJ. His name is Junior Vasquez. He was doing a
Big DJ. Big DJ.
sorry,
Big DJ.
big DJ, and he was doing. You know, this was when house was starting to become the thing. So, which is really funny because now, you know, that's pop music. The Four on the Floor that's pop. But then it was just like, you know, we were just kind of doing it. And, so I was like, yeah, oh, of course, I will, you know. And so I think we were there maybe 4 or 5 days or something, working on a couple of songs. And then we went back to New York, and he just continued to send us stuff to do because he had all these other artists that he was like The Time, uh, Jill Jones. There was Mavis Staples. He had all these other things, you know, artists that he was working with in part of his little stable there. So that went on until, I don't know, God, the middle of 1990, and then I said, all right, I've got like, now I have this name. You know, I had some names before, but this is full on.
Yeah.
Prince changed everything, no doubt.
Because you came back to town, you you settled and you were not just a guy, but you were the guy who did Prince remixes.
I was, and it's interesting you said remixes because then I had the confidence to sort of shop myself around as more of a well, I've done Prince and like, oh, but you do remixes. I began to learn a lot more about the American record industry, which was and is very keen to put people in a box. Like, oh, you do that. Oh, you do that. Oh, you do that.
Right.
And I thought, well, yeah, but I do this too. And like, you do that. You haven't done that. So this is what you do. And so I thought, well, how am I going to break out of this? So I went to England and got a manager in England because I knew like the English are more, open to things, and having Prince as a name, that throw me on anything. They don't care. It's kind of like that. So I did some remixes, but then this manager got me a lot of work on the continent as a producer. Like said, this is like, you can produce, artists there because it's obviously, it's off the radar a bit. This is back when things could be off the radar.
Yeah. I see that in '93 you worked on a Plan B record. And I was trying to figure out how that came to pass.
I did. I worked on one. Yeah, I did that in 1992. We recorded that. I just went. My manager said there's this band in Berlin, and they want you to finish like a mix and do a remix of this song, and then we'll see what happens. And so I went there and did this. And we all got on like a house on fire. And then like I went home and I don't know, a few weeks later, I went back to Berlin for something like a month and a half. And this was in 1992. So it was a very, very different place than it is now. It was just the East was opening up. And
Right.
I remember I used to, we all had bicycles. These guys were very clever. They decided we should all have bicycles and they buried it in their recording budget. So we all had bicycles. And I used to ride around East Berlin, and it was like, wow. It was still bullet holes in the building. It was just like, kind of lost in. It's exactly like you would think. It's gray, communist, concrete. And you go, wow, I get why everyone wanted to get out of here.
Yeah.
It's not like that now. Now the East is fantastic, but it was something. And that was one of the greatest trips I think I ever took, was to be in Berlin at that time for that amount of time.
And you were starting to amass these credits. You worked on Sean Colvin's, I guess, probably her biggest record, right? A Few Small Repairs. It was probably her biggest record to date.
Yes.
And Al Green.
Al Green, that's a good story. That's a really good story, Al Green. Because, it sounds like I'm just sailing here, right? I'm pressing all the right buttons. And there's one time I did not press the right button. And, Arthur Baker had this song. He had this song called Message of Love. And it was a really fantastic pop song. And he knew it, and he said, it's going to be it. And it's like, I'm going to get whatever to sing it. And he had this person singing it, and who I don't want to name because I don't want to name them. And it was cool and it was done, except he couldn't stop tinkering with it. He was like, wanted to just do something. There was something missing, this kind of thing. So I'm in there engineering it, and this is like 48 track times. And, he had been throwing so much stuff that the tracks were all full. And I was like, I got to move something around. I was like, oh, here's the bridge lead vocal. I'll move this to this track, and then I can move that over there, and then I'll have this one track open, and we can do something. So I moved to everything, checked it, and then we're starting to work. Get to the bridge, and there's no vocal. Like, am I something? And then I realized, oh man, I just had that thing on input. I didn't arm the track when I moved it over. So this vocal was gone. Now let's add something to that mix. Not only was his vocal gone, but by this point there was a lawsuit going on with this person. So that was not going to be happening again.
Oh my God.
This was not going to get sung again. And yeah, that was kind of when I stopped working there. He just decided maybe I'm not going to work with you anymore. I was like, oh, I get it. I did actually start working with him again a couple years later, but that was iffy. But because I did that and that original vocal got damaged, he got Al Green to do it.
Wow. Wow.
And I don't think that would not have happened had I not screwed up.
Probably not.
So that's a good old lemonade out of whatever.
So Al Green that record came out in 95, and then Telling Lies, 1996.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned Sean Colvin. There was 1 week in 1996 where I was doing Sean Colvin. I was recording all her vocals at Shelter Island Studio in Chelsea, Steve Adabo's place. And I was doing David. This was like the first time I was working with him. And I was kind of sandwiching these sessions around so that I could do them both. And I also just finished this remix of this huge, for a minute, artist in England. I'd done it with Arthur, called Babylon Zoo. It was massive. Like in England, things could be massive for 5 minutes and then you never hear about it.
Animal Army?
I forget the title.
Yeah, I think it was Animal Army.
Yeah. And I thought, wow, Then I thought, you know what? Now I'm really doing this. Like now I am actually doing this. This is for real. This is full on. So with David, kind of just happened. That's another one of these total accidents where you just happen to be right place, right time, and have your act together. Where
the third part of that is the part that's the most important.
Oh, when you get your opportunity not to screw it up?
Well, yeah, but I mean, he was a very good judge of character, and he was a good judge of people. And you obviously did the things that he saw. He was really good at casting people and choosing people.
Yes. But I remember at the beginning, I was kind of, because they asked me to do this session. He had come to Philip. I had a room in Philip Glass's studio at this time, and
The Looking Glass.
at Looking Glass, and I was kind of like the resident. Everyone else was Philip people. I discovered Philip's studio around 1991. I'd done a mix for a band called the Poppies that was on Columbia, and Columbia got me to do it. And they said, "Oh, they're at the studio downtown in NoHo." I didn't even know what NoHo was. And I went there, and it was like this cool little SSL studio that had a window. And I thought, I'm working here. This place has a window. I'm going to stick around here. And this was around the time my first child was born. I had all my kind of gear and stuff at home. I was doing like MIDI pre-production at home and having my stuff carted out. I thought, I should get it out of there. And I thought, I'll get a room here. And I said, do you have any space here? Like, I just need like a little space to, put my stuff and my gear, and then I can bring it down the hall to the studio and do my, my projects. And they're like, yeah. And they put me in this little room, and it cost me something like $300 a month. And I was there till the end of the decade.
Wow.
So I became like that person, because everyone else was doing Philip stuff, and that was a very particular discipline. But I was like the, rock guy or what have you. So David came to check out the Looking Glass because Philip had done his Philip adaptation of Low. And David he was very into that. And then he heard that Philip had a studio, and David had been working at like the Hit Factory or whatever. He's like he wanted a little bit of a change, so he came down to visit, and he liked it. He came with Reeves Gabrels, and they were like, "Oh, cool, we'll work here." And they thought maybe they'd bring an engineer, but maybe we'll get somebody that knows this place, and that would be me. Uh, so I was going to do like a week or two of working on some live recordings and this new song of his called "Telling Lies." And I thought, okay, cool, I'll do it for a couple of weeks. I was like, well, David Bowie, I haven't really followed him lately. Like, I'm sure
That
it'll be
a lot
fun.
of people forget that he wasn't always, in his passing in Black Star, and everybody says, "Oh, David Bowie." Everybody always knew about him, and everybody always loved him, and he would be the first person to say that that wasn't always the case, and that his career had ups and downs.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this was sort of post Tin Machine. Tin Machine was like his great reset from the 80s because
Mhm.
he got kind of pulled into, the 80s.
Right, right.
And, you know, that's a great Reeves story because Reeves Gabrels is freaking brilliant. Reeves was on the Glass Spider tour because his wife was a journalist and she was on the tour and he just tagged along. David didn't know he was a guitar player. They just started to get on as friends because Reeves is very artsy and that's David's and they just started to kind of bond this way. Um, at the end of the tour, Reeves's wife said to David, gave him a cassette and said, "You should listen to this." And it was just like Reeves's work. And that was kind of the end of it. Then they, you know, Tin Machine, boom, right after that. Um, so it's just another things happen in the oddest, strangest ways with music. It's just, which is one of the, it's one of the great and one of the maddening things about it. Because sometimes it would be nice to predict what you're going to do next week, but I do kind of, the chance element is really fun.
So then you were working on this track, and then it became the album, and then
Well, it was like this too because they were going out to do. This is like coming into summer of '96, and they were going to do a festival tour in Europe. And at the end of the session, David says to me, "We're going to come back here in the fall and do an album with you." And I said, "Yeah, sure." I was already properly jaded by that point. I'm like, everybody says that. So I was like, "Oh, cool, okay, I think never happened." Um, so then a month or two later, I'm in Berlin working on a record with somebody. And I noticed somehow that David is going to be in Leipzig, which is, I don't know, 90 miles south of there or something. I said, that's close. I wonder if I could go. I could see the show. That'd be kind of interesting. Um, I said, how do I do that? And so then, and this is before anything. Um, so I called the management office because I couldn't email. You couldn't do any of that. And I said, hey, I'm in Berlin. If I can get myself to Leipzig for can I go to the show? Well, let me in the show. Like, oh, well, we'll get back to you. Hold on. We'll call you back and whatever. I was like, okay. So they called me back and they said, okay, do this. Go to the main train station. There is a ticket there waiting for you. When you get to Leipzig, check into this certain hotel. That's where the band is, and you'll have a room there waiting. The band call is 4:30 in the lobby. So be there at 4:30. You'll get on the bus and you'll go to the show. You come back from the show, spend the night there, and then you go, use the rest of your ticket and go back to Berlin. And not only was I, grateful they did this on my behalf, but that was my beginning of learning how things could happen in that world. It could just be like, boom. All of a sudden, oh, you're doing this. It would just happen like that. And me thinking I'd figure out a way to get to this town was just like, wow, I was, like first class service. It was amazing. And so I'm backstage. And again, too bad it's before the age of smartphones, because I'm backstage and the first thing I see, is David talking to Iggy Pop. And they're just having a conversation. And I was like, whoa, oh, and I would have snapped it but, not possible then. And it all, began to hit me more like, wow. And David said, we're coming to make that album with you. You know that. I said, yeah, okay. But sure enough, I get home and end of August, they said, okay, well, are you still free for this time? Because we're going to block out the studio and da-da-da-da. And it's like, wow, okay. A whole bunch of gear showed up, and that was it. Then I just didn't leave until 2003.
Wow. And you became the MD of the tour in 97?
99.
99.
Yeah. Yeah, my first time around was for Earthling, and I was engineer, programmer, mixer, producer guy. I did not do any of that. I didn't play. I mean, I sequenced stuff, but I wasn't like a player. But I was that person that first time around, which was fine, which was great. I mean, actually, Earthling was the record I wanted to make the entirety of the 90s, because that was taking all I'd learned in the Arthur Baker world and shoving it into a rock record, which they began to call electronica. But I'd been steadily doing that more and more over the course of the decade, with artists like Plan B. We were doing that. They were very into that. But there was never an artist to do it with to sort of break the bubble.
Yeah.
Until him. And then it just, it broke the bubble for sure. But then I became that guy. Now I'm the electronica guy. And, I'm getting, this is, then life changes again and I'm getting calls, but they all want me to make Earthling with their artists.
Of course.
And I'm like, but no, I just did that. And I've been trying to do that the whole decade. And I just did that like exponentially better than it could ever be done for me, for my standards. And now I want to sit on a hilltop and play acoustic guitar. I am ready to go there. I'm ready to move. But it was just like everybody wanted that. And so I did some of that because, but then I started to really wear on it, because I just never wanted to be stuck doing the same thing all the time. It just be, yeah, you get good at, you get better at these things, but I don't know. I like to be fresh and have new challenges and things thrown at me. It keeps me going. So then, in the spring of 1999, I get a page. Remember pagers? People had pagers.
Yeah.
The page, and it's Reeves. It's his number, which I used to call the number of the Gabrels. And I call him, and he says, "Well, we've been doing little home demos of this next record. It's going to be kind of a little different. How would you feel about being the fretless bass player on this record?" I was like, "Yes, of course." That's the left turn. I was looking for a left turn, and that was a left turn. I did eventually, I kind of began to do the same thing, like engineer, and I ended up mixing it as well. But I started, I play a little acoustic guitar as well on that record. So that was a whole other character, which makes total sense because it's David, and he's not he's not going to say you just do that. He could see what you would do, and he would throw you into it. So that was brilliant to me. That was just fantastic.
I love the story that you told me about you and Gail being on the road and switching off between bass and guitar.
Yeah. Well, after that was ours, and then I got in the band by accident because they did They did VH1 Storytellers, and I knew they needed an extra like acoustic guitar player because there was going to be that angle to it. And so I just said, man, I could be that guy. I could do that. I know they, and I'm in the family. They know who I am, and they know I'm, they know I'm okay. And they were like, yeah, you sure? It's very obvious. And then I never left the band. Then he um, and then Reeves left, and Reeves had been the band leader. And then David's like, well, why don't you be the band leader? I said, well, I don't know. I don't know how to do that. I mean, I've never done that. I wasn't gonna, I was gonna give him a snow job. I was like, I've never really done that. They said it's like producing, but you're on a bus and you can't fire anybody. I said, okay, sounds good to me. I could do that. So that tour had a lot of promo, which means a lot of miming. David would sing. He would sing along with, a playback track that would have everything else. And we would stand there looking pretty, doing this here, and that's fun once. And then, there was a lot of that. And after about the fourth or fifth one, it just started to get a little boring. I said to Gail, why don't we just switch? Notice. We were in Italy, let's all switch. So we switch. Mike Garson and Sterling Campbell switch. So we're all switched up.
But you and Gail can actually play this stuff.
Well, this was discovered quickly because it was the director said, no, you don't play, because Mike, no. But they left us alone. Because we could, So, David thought this was funny, of course. So, I said to Gail, how would you feel if we did that for real, like on a song or whatever, And she's like, I would love that because I could play some guitar. So I said, all right, so we'll have to figure out what to do it. What song could we do it, And so we'll just keep it in the back of my mind. And then as accidents happen to go, we are in the departure lounge in Milan, where we were. This was just like the next day or something. And in the departure lounge, on the TV, there it is, the Ashes to Ashes video from Scary Monsters. And I said, whoa, that's it. We could do that, because I knew Gail wasn't into the popping thing. She is now. Now she's great at it, but she didn't like it then. I thought we could do that. And she's like, yeah, because, and it made perfect sense for us to do that song. So it was just a combination of goofing off and a happy accident, as, typical.
Wow. That's great. And you guys made a little family there, which I've had the pleasure of being in the room with a lot of you. So really.
Yeah, that was a really nice group, actually. Gail and Sterling and Mike, and then Earl Slick came the next year. He came back.
Mm-hmm. And Kat, who was here yesterday.
Kat came the year after that. The next time around, Kat came. Hi, Kat.
Yeah.
So, and Jerry Leonard. And I'm forgetting, Holly Palmer and M. Griner, the singers. It was a really nice crew of people.
Yeah. And, I want to talk about this other work that you've been doing, but you've been doing some new mixes of David's stuff recently.
Maybe. Some things, perhaps. We'll see. I'm not spoiling surprises.
Well, you're credited on this thing that came out, which is, or maybe it was recorded then and it just got released. This thing, which is It Any Wonder?
Oh, of course. Yeah, that. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now I know what you're talking about. Yeah. So that stuff's already out.
Yeah.
I'm the last to know. Okay.
2020.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. There's been like a few of these, and I've sort of given the situation, the global situation.
You can omit anything that feels like you want to admit it. Omit it. It's fine.
Oh no, I just kind of I lost track because yeah, but something did just come out. That's right.
Yeah.
I missed it. I've been a little bit social media shy recently, and kind of uh, I've been working and dealing with homeschooling and all that. So it's been
Yeah.
not much time to do much else. But that's cool that all these things are coming out. Like they what is it? They call it Changes Now, which is like this little semi-acoustic set we did in late '96.
Yeah.
With Gail Reeves and David and I, and that was another that was typical stuff like that would happen all the time. Like, oh, we're going to do a radio show, and we need a few songs, and let's just do them and throw them out there. And it's like, okay, we did the whole thing in like a day, and now you listen to it now, it's like it's really fun. It's really great to
And talk a little bit about your. I know many people are here to hear about David Bowie, and you could talk about David Bowie all day. But I also wanted you to talk about your work with various musicals recently, because you've been working on those productions and writing and producing and all this stuff for theater work.
I've done a little theater, a little bit of that. I did what did I do? I co-wrote a musical with a friend of mine in Paris, who I met years and years ago through another artist that I worked with there. And he is more of a theater person, theater singer and actor, and he has a close relationship with the director there. And the director said, write a bunch of music and I'll build a play around it, kind of thing. And so they got me to do it with them. I said, yeah, sure, why not? Again, it's like, what have I got to lose? I'm not like I don't really know what I'm doing, but I mean, what's there to know that I won't sort of pick up along the way? So that was really interesting, and for that I had to learn Sibelius for that, which is a music notation program, because a lot of what goes on with this is, you write music, but it's not really concrete, because it tends to change a lot, given like, okay, the actor starts singing, and then a week later, oh, it's too high for me, I have to lower it. It's like, okay, we have to make this song 30 seconds shorter, cut 30 seconds, like, oh, which 30 seconds? So things like this. And then and I'm not going to scribble this out every time, even though my scribbling is not really good. So I thought, wow, if I'm going to change parts like on every other day, I better figure this out so that I can, get parts to musicians. How am I going to, I'm not just going to say, hey, play, stop there. I can't.
Yeah.
No. So I had to go up a little disciplined road, which is really great, because now I use that for kind of everything, to notate anything I'm doing. It's really handy. But that was a whole other world. I'd done some of that in school. There was a degree of that in Indiana, so it wasn't all that foreign to me, but it was sure interesting. It was another part of like trying to continue to do this in the musical economy means that you need a good degree of flexibility, and not try to stick to your guns too much about, well, I do that, I do this genre, and I'm not gonna, which isn't me anyway. So that made sense for me to do that. But I've always been kind of, especially the last 10 years or so, it's like I try to do as much as I can, even if it's not my sort of typical thing, if I have a typical thing.
Right. Well, you continue to grow your skill set, and your mixes sound better than ever, I have to say.
Thank you.
Really fantastic. And if anybody's interested in having the wonderful mixes of Mark Plati from his largely analog and highly equipped studio with his highly equipped ears, you can find him on his website.
I'm there. I
You're
believe.
open for business.
The shingle's up. Shingle is up. I've been very lucky. I have been working. I was into a couple of things before this all came down, and I'm very lucky.
That's
Absolutely.
great. That's great. Mark, thanks so much for sharing yourself and your time with us today.
Thank you for having me on.
I know everybody loved it, and I certainly loved it. Thanks a lot. And I'll see you around the neighborhood with mask on.
Yeah, because now coffee shops are back.
Yeah, we'll stand 6 feet apart and drink an espresso.
6 foot coffee. I'm in.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Ciao.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks for joining me for this episode of The Right Key. If you enjoyed the episode, there's a lot more coming. Please click the subscribe and like buttons below. If you want to know more about me or our guests, you can find lots of information in the link just below the video. See you next time.